Great to have you on the show. I know Jordan interviewed you back when he was doing his Florida trip. In fact, we're going to play a little bit of that clip, I believe. Should we play it now, maybe?
Yeah, let's start with that.
I mean, Ron DeSantis' own, I don't remember the title, but press secretary, yeah, that's right, went on Twitter and said it's an anti-grooming bill. And that is such a blatantly obvious dog whistle to legally enforce this stereotype that has put queer people in danger, that has gotten us killed. That is the reason we have, higher homicide rates. It's a regular thing. I could go on for hours with stories of small, times where I was put in uncomfortable situations or people were homophobic or rude or whatever. And Florida already has the highest LGBTQ suicide rate of any state. And queer teens are 4 times more likely to commit suicide. And they know that because I said that and I was one of hundreds that said that, testifying in the Senate and the House of Representatives. I went door to door talking to senators and representatives, Republican and Democrat, telling them these statistics and telling them personal stories. They heard me, they listened, and they voted for it anyways because they know what they're doing and they are trying to kill us.
Yeah, you know what? We've actually now had some of these politicians literally come out and say they want to eradicate transgenderism. The anti-grooming stuff has reached epic proportions where we actually have literal Nazis showing up at drag shows, making really horrifying statements about trans kids.
So, Will, what is your initial reaction as they're now trying to expand this policy, and they can basically do so without any public opinion whatsoever, too?
Yeah, so I just got back from Tallahassee last night, actually, and I'd been there for 3 days lobbying and fighting against these so many bills. My initial reaction is that I'm not surprised. I'm not remotely surprised. Their rhetoric last year, the words they used, and everything they said pointed to the fact that this was the first step to something worse and bigger. Last year's Parental Rights in Education Don't Say Gay bill was already the second iteration of a similar bill. The first one just wasn't egregious enough that anyone knew about it. So this, in reality, is the third expansion. I talked to my government teacher today and found out that she will no longer be allowed to teach about Obergefell versus Hodges, the Supreme Court case that legalized gay marriage, in class because of this bill expanding Don't Say Gay all the way through 12th grade. This is objectively a Don't Say Gay bill. Don't say gay or LGBTQ. It was already heinous and problematic, having been K through 3rd. Being through 12 is it's unreal. It's unreal. I knew that I was queer in 5th grade. Most kids can say the same. There are so many reasons to talk about gender and sexuality that don't even have to do with being queer per se, but have to do with history and have to do with science and all these other topics that are vital to education, which will be completely eradicated. It's terrifying.
When people, just on that, when people do say things like you hear, especially, and I feel like this is something that people do a lot when Ron DeSantis is involved, which is one of the reasons why I think he is so dangerous. When they downplay these bills and when they say, oh, no, it's just about giving parents more rights and giving parents a say and this and that. What is your response to that?
I mean, it's not about parents' rights. Off the bat, we know that. It's about taking away the rights of LGBTQ students. Second of all, I think a point that is not made nearly enough is the fact that parental rights shouldn't infringe upon students' rights. My rights end where yours begin. And that is sort of something that they've seemingly forgotten. There's one licensed mental health counselor at my school, and previous to 1557 being implemented, you could go and you could anonymously talk to them for an hour and then leave. That's life-saving to a lot of kids, especially kids without supportive parents. Right. I was let know that this year because when I was having a bad day, I decided I just need to talk to them just today. They don't need to know who I am, none of that. And they told me because of House Bill 1557, I now have to get a consent form signed by my parents.
Oh my God.
That's very dangerous if you have parents that aren't supportive.
Well, so one of my friends who has parents that don't believe in therapy and are religious, naturally, forged her parents' signature to get this life-saving therapy. And that's literally a crime. And that's such a massive barrier to students, especially students who are afraid of their parents. Right. So that, you know, these implications, it doesn't just harm queer kids, it harms everyone. Another thing that happened, and this is just the original 1557. This isn't even the expansion and everything that's encompassed in that. But I'm the president of my school's queer student union, or former president of my school's queer student union. Last year when we were meeting, we used to take roll of everyone's names and their contact. So when we had events, we could mobilize our members. We had to start taking tally marks instead, and not being able to track membership made running a club a lot harder. The reason we did tally marks is because now if a parent calls the school and says, is my kid in the GSA, they by law have to tell them. So we had to stop taking roll because that endangers most of our members. Our members are staying after school at the GSA because they can't go home to a safe and affirming environment. And on top of all this, this isn't even the most egregious attack on transgender kids that we're seeing in the state legislature. I was in a committee the day before yesterday. No, yesterday. I was literally in committee yesterday for a bill that would not only ban gender-affirming care for people under 18. The Board of Medicine already did that, but the Board of Medicine did it so that people already receiving gender-affirming care would be grandfathered in. This bill reverses that, effectively forcing people under 18 to detransition by December 30th. So if you've been on hormones or puberty blockers or anything of the sort for 5 years, you are forced to stop on December 30th.
Which can be very bad medically speaking. There's definitely consequences to that.
There's so many consequences. I mean, and the main and most important one is pretty obvious. This is going to lead to a massive and horrifying spike in suicides. That's what's going to happen. Florida already has the highest LGBTQ suicide rate. And that's what this bill is going to do. It is going to kill people. And when I went up and testified, that's all I said. I said, I want you to look me in the eyes so I can tell you that this is going to kill people. And I want you to sleep with that because I know you're going to pass it anyways. And they passed it anyways.
I honestly don't think that a lot of these individuals care. It's stunning to me, the increase and the volume and the hatred that I'm seeing when it comes to transgender rights. Transgender has been something that's part of humanity since the dawn of man. It's nothing new. It's nothing crazy, but all of a sudden in the last, I'd say 2 years, it's become this giant right-wing extremist cultural thing that's happening. I had actually covered at CHOC, which is the Children's Hospital. They had in Anaheim, they had a conference, and a lot of it was about gender-affirming care and things like this. All of these doctors had no idea that these right-wing extremists had planned this, counter-protest outside of where they were having this conference. And the doctors were coming out and just getting berated by these just really loud, mean-spirited, and also completely clueless individuals that had no idea what they were even talking about when it came to the medical aspects of what was on the table. But they didn't care, right? And I'd say a lot of this was driven by religious beliefs. So I wanted to ask you if, in your opinion, is this, a form of theocracy? Do you think a lot of these laws are being motivated by just the increase in extreme right-wing viewpoints within the evangelical community? I know Ron DeSantis is a very religious guy.
Okay, this is what I think. I think religion, I think humanity is smart enough to know that religion is made up by humans at this point. So I think, unlike the past, when there were spikes in fascism led by religion, back then, religion was sort of the reason, people were, because of their religious beliefs, doing this. And I do think that's happening, but now it's more so just using religion as a vessel to be hateful instead, because I do not believe that any of these people are truly religious. I do not believe that any of these people actually care about the word of God or the 10 Commandments or anything in the Bible. They just know that it's something that holds power that they can use against us.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of the rhetoric is, it's this. I hate to say it, but it's the same sort of stuff that you heard in Nazi Germany prior to, Hitler, doing genocide, not just on Jewish folks, but on many other individuals. I mean,
Absolutely.
There's definitely a connection there in the increase in fascism that we're seeing in this country, and why this has become such an issue. And it's not just transgender individuals; it's drag shows, it's drag queen story hour, and as that expands, it's including the entire community, right? So I think that they might ultimately end up going after gay marriage. I don't think that that's off the table.
Absolutely not. I mean, was it Alito or Clarence Thomas? Either Samuel Alito or Clarence Thomas. One of them, in the majority opinion overturning Roe v. Wade, said that they will be challenging Obergefell versus Hodges, which would effectively overturn gay marriage. But so back to what you were saying about the parallels between this and Nazi Germany, it is nearly identical. Telling you from the ground, being here, watching it happen, I was privileged enough to go to a really good private school in California, so I got a true education growing up. So I've seen what education can be, and now I see what it can be. So I learned about the Holocaust in depth, and watching what's happening here in Florida, I am seeing all the similarities. Very, very frightening. And I could be wrong, but if this year is, or if last year is to this year as this year is to next year,
yeah,
I won't be surprised if there are camps for trans people. That is how
I won't either.
That's
I
how
won't either.
it is this year than it is last year. And can I tell you something happening in my school district right now?
Yeah.
So, Boone High School, neighboring high school, their GSA, student-led, student-organized. This is a high school. I'm a legal adult. This is high school. Boone High School's GSA organized a Dragon Donuts after-school event that was supposed to happen today.
Okay.
Essentially, what would happen is Mama Ashley Rose, local drag legend, nothing but family friendly. That's her whole thing. Yeah. Was going to come in, talk about queer culture, and eat donuts with the students. Alicia Ferrant, a school board member on Orange County Public Schools who Ron DeSantis donated to, part of Moms for Liberty. She represents Boone High School.
God. Moms for Liberty.
Oh, yes, that. She used her connection to DeSantis to get the Board of Education to call OCPS and threaten to open an investigation on not just the GSA sponsor, not just the teacher sponsor, but the school board members, tying their hands. Because even though the majority of the school board and the superintendent fought against this, the Board of Education has the power to remove the superintendent. They tied their hands behind their backs and they canceled a student-organized after-school event. That goes against what the sponsor of the original Don't Say Gay bill said would happen, because they promised it wouldn't affect after-school activities. And here they are canceling a student-organized drag show. That is atrocious.
It is atrocious. The other thing that I'm very disturbed by is this consistent uptick in calling everybody, not just a groomer, but a pedophile, right? We're seeing this language now. All gay folks are now pedophiles. Like I absolutely see people saying this, which is frightful. It's like, no, that absolutely isn't true. Meanwhile, you have so many right-wing extremists that have been arrested, for gun charges and a whole host of things. I would call these folks, neo-Nazi domestic terrorists, including one from Adam Waffen Division. So many of these folks were arrested with literal child pornography on their laptops and phones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Ron DeSantis got high school girls drunk when he was in college.
So is it just Olympic level projection? What is driving this?
It is absolutely that Olympic level projection. Everything that they are accusing queer people of, they are doing themselves. Yeah. They're saying that we are destroying education. And I don't know if you saw this, but DeSantis got the Florida Department of Education to change a elementary school textbook about Rosa Parks to not
see that.
even talk about skin color.
No.
It just said that she sat in a seat that she wasn't allowed to sit on, and then someone told her to move, and she didn't. That's all.
Well, and he's trying to ban books by the boatload. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like,
math
there's
books
another
even.
book every week.
Successfully banning books. Successfully.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
he's really the free speech warrior he claims to be. I mean,
It's
just
all
amazing.
it is all projection. I mean, I don't know if y'all have read 1984 by George Orwell, but the Department of Peace was quite the opposite. The Department of Love, quite the opposite. That is exactly what is happening in Florida. That's exactly what's happening in Florida. The Department of Education is the exact opposite of what it says it is.
Yeah, it's very Orwellian. I don't disagree with that.
It's guys. I knew that it was worse this year than last year with the supermajority, but after spending 3 days in the Capitol, I was not prepared for how much worse it actually is. I could name all 5 bad bills last year, 5 of them. There are probably 30 plus. I learn about a new bill attacking trans people every single day. It is, I could sit here and tell you for hours more other things that bills have implications of. House Bill 411 allows anyone anywhere to run for school board anywhere in Florida. And Ron DeSantis put $10 million into school board races in 2022.
Yeah. No, yeah. This is a thing that's happening. Also, we're seeing I've seen Proud Boys now running for school board positions. I've seen a few Oath Keepers. There's definitely something happening at that lower level where let's get infiltrated into school boards and we can really, start changing. And they've been successful in a few of these counties doing that, which is also
happening right here in my own backyard. Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you about a specific policy too. Like I know there's like so many going on right now, and it's
so bad. It's
I follow a journalist named Aaron Reed. They do a really good job like keeping track of everything just across the country because we're well into the hundreds now. Yeah. But
I think it's almost 300. Honestly, it was what
I went from last year being.
I thought it was higher than that. I thought it was like past 400. I hope I'm wrong.
All right.
I hope you're right and I'm wrong, but I've heard it's like over 400. But the one
to listen outside of Florida, so I don't even know what's going on out there. But I went from last year being terrified for Florida to this year being terrified for the entire country. I don't even know. But sorry. Anyways, continue.
Well, this one's Florida specific, where it's like we're talking about. So far, we've talked about parents who aren't supportive. Well, now they're trying to penalize parents who are. And I wanted to get your take on the proposed Florida bill that basically allows the legal kidnapping of transgender children. If you're familiar with that, and if you have any experience with that so far.
I testified in opposition of it yesterday. So It's actually the same bill that would force kids to detransition. Fun fact. It all falls under one thing right there. So a few facts about that. It has been a little bit dramatized, but that isn't to say it's not something to be afraid of. Well, it only applies if the parents are divorced and if one parent is supporting the transition of their kid and the other one doesn't like it. That's the only place where that applies. But regardless, it does allow in some cases for the state to take hold of the kid for being supported by their parents. Parents of trans kids are leaving in droves out of Florida. Everyone has an escape plan right now. I'm lucky enough that I'm at the place where I'm going to college next year and I have opportunities to leave the state. Thank God. But, so many people don't have that ability and so many people are going to, give birth to a trans kid and not be able to get out. And that is what's happening. The other thing that bill does is it makes it illegal for adult trans people to change the gender on their birth certificate. It makes it so that insurance companies cannot cover any gender affirming care stating that it's cosmetic. It makes it's so horribly written. Listen to this. It's
cosmetic. It is absolutely not cosmetic. My God.
Oh, I know. And there were doctors there saying that, but they didn't want to listen. But Representative Randy Fine, who filed and wrote this bill, did such a terrible job writing it that it accidentally outlaws circumcision, which personally I'm not against. I'm not against that, but that's how badly written this law is. And
wow.
And it makes it so insurance companies can't cover vasectomies or mastectomies. That's another thing that it accidentally does because it's so horribly written.
It's so broadly written, that it has all these unintended consequences.
And he had the audacity to make a joke about having a big dick while
Oh,
explaining
Jesus.
the bill.
Really?
Pity. Yeah.
What was his joke?
It was something along the lines of, well, like we wouldn't want insurance companies to pay for people to enlarge their penis. Not that I've ever had a problem with that.
No.
Oh my God, of course. Like no part
Gold.
of this no part of this is shocking to me. Will, let me ask you a question. So the fact that they are expanding this legislation to now, cover high schoolers, I think this is much more detrimental than, like, it shouldn't exist at all, but I think it's much more detrimental because you're talking about kids that are much older, more aware of a great many things, might have already been having gender-affirming care at some point. So I think that the outcomes here can be much worse. Would you say that that's right?
So as we've seen in my district, school boards are now in charge of GSA events. This bill is going to, whether they say that it will or not, it will ban GSAs completely. There will be no more queer clubs. There will be, teachers will not be allowed to be trans. There's a teacher at my school who's non-binary, uses they, them pronouns. They will not be allowed to use they, them pronouns and tell the students to use they, them pronouns. They're not going to be allowed to respect their students. A teacher will be breaking the law if they use correct pronouns on students. This is going to lead to a mass teacher exodus. We already have 5,500 plus teacher vacancies across the state of Florida. I had 3 teachers quit last year.
Wow, that many. That's a lot.
I have 4 of my teachers have told me that they plan to quit within the next 4 years, and 2 of my teachers are leaving at the end of the year. One of my teachers works 2 jobs and is, get this, fucking homeless. So, teachers.
Not only are they being faced with these laws that they're going to be responsible for if something goes wrong. It's not just this; it's also the banning of books in the libraries. And they get paid very little money for all of that. Why would they stay? I mean, it makes sense.
Well, and then there's also a bill that is likely to pass that would abolish the teachers union. They're going to have no more protection. So we're at a point when this expansion bill passes, you're going to see a massive rise in suicides. You're going to see GSAs be dismantled across the state, and you're going to see teachers and queer families leaving in droves. And it's not going to be pretty. It is not going to be good. And I think
you're also going to see an increase in hate crime.
We've already seen that. We've already seen rates of hate crimes go up in Florida since last year with this rhetoric. Because aside from the legal attacks on queer people, the highest power in the state and the majority of our government are empowering people who bully me, who have threatened to beat me up, who have threatened to kill me. They are telling those people, you're right, you're correct, and that person is probably a pedophile, so you should kill them. And that's what they're telling them. By empowering these people, this hatred, they're putting us in so much more danger than the law could even. I agree. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I was you kind of hinted at this, and I did sort of want to ask you. I mean, your activism is incredibly admirable. Thank you so much for what you do. It's very sad that you have to do it, but we're really glad you do. And you are a senior, so what are your future plans, if you want to share?
So I originally, my whole life, had always planned to leave Florida for college. I grew up in California. I've lived here since 8th grade, and I love Florida. There's a lot of great things about this state, and I've really enjoyed my time here, but I've always been someone who wants to see new places and travel. So it was always my plan to leave the state. Now, over the past 6 to 12 months, as I've gotten into applying to colleges, I've applied to many out of state, I've applied to schools in state. It's become increasingly clear, I don't want to go into debt. That's not something I want to do. Florida has a fantastic scholarship program, Bright Futures, best in the country. It doesn't take much for me to get 100% of my college expenses paid, and then a refund for the government. So I have just straight, I get paid to go to school and live somewhere. Okay. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. That's, one of the reasons so many people have been moving to Florida up until recently. And so I was looking at doing, 2 years in Florida and then transferring and getting, saving thousands of dollars. But House Bill 999 bans women and gender studies and Jewish studies and anything.
Even at universities?
So it bans public universities from having.
Oh, I
these
didn't realize that. Jesus,
women
are you
and gender
kidding
studies
me?
major is banned. Jewish studies, the major, is banned. It puts the governor's office and legislature in charge of the core curriculum. It totally destroys the system of tenure and makes it so that professors.
Wow, this is way worse than I thought. I didn't realize
It's
that.
worse than anyone knows. People don't know. So
No, I didn't know this about colleges. I thought it was just high schools. Jesus.
No. It
Pardon
is
my French.
So no. So it's colleges, and so I was initially planning to stay, but I would not get a proper education. And would I, if I were to stay? I'm thinking of studying sociology, political science, something along the lines. I'm not 100% sure which direction I'm going to go yet, but many of the classes that I would want to learn from, anything about African American studies, completely banned from colleges too. My friends at UCF, which is just down the street, are telling me their professors are quitting. I had one friend who told me 3 of their professors quit last week.
Yeah, I don't blame. It's not shocking, especially if they're adjunct and not tenured. I mean,
it's removing tenure. It's making it impossible to teach. It's making it impossible for real education to happen. Also, I don't know if you saw what happened at New College. It's a public school in Florida.
I did see that. Absolutely frightful.
Yeah. So that also happened. That's going to happen to other schools. Do
you want to talk on that a minute? So if people don't know about that, maybe it's worth mentioning.
Absolutely. It is absolutely worth mentioning. It's definitely one of the things happening here. So DeSantis can appoint the board of trustees for all the public colleges, totally overwhelm the board of trustees at New College, which has been a liberal majority LGBTQ school in Sarasota since the 70s. And they fired the principal, or they fired the president, and they're reviewing and firing most of the staff and turning the entire school into a Christian conservative public education institution instead of what it was before, which was an organic school teaching what the students wanted. So I don't think that I would get a real education if I stayed here, and I don't know where the state is going. As much as I would love to stay and fight for my people and fight for my state, I only live one time, and I am exhausted and I'm depressed and I can't do this anymore. Today they passed permitless open carry and then changed the age, which had been previously 18 to 21 after Parkland, back to 18, all in one bill. It's not safe to be in Florida.
No, it's not. It's not. Especially if you're trans, it's insane. Or even any member of the LGBTQ community is not safe.
I mean, we're just seeing society go backwards.
We 100% are.
I mean, the things that you are bringing up, Will, I mean, I am older than you, and Tina and I are both older than you. And
I'm older than Ron. Sorry.
I wasn't going to bring that up, but you did. So, okay. But I went to college at Indiana University, which
UC Irvine
is actually a pretty progressive university, but, it's also in a very red state. So, you get a little bit of everything. But, I mean, some of the stuff that you're bringing up, I'm thinking like that's backwards from where we were. And I was in college a while ago. It's
it's frightful. This is it's bad for society.
My cat is
too,
concerned
across the board. That is very concerning. It's like,
and it's happening in other states. Like it's
Tennessee is having a real problem too.
Arkansas, Tennessee. Also, North Dakota. I don't know if you saw this. They're banning books from their public library system. Not schools, but their public library system. Also, UCI. I grew up like right next to UCI.
Oh, did you? All right. Woohoo! Can I get a Zot.
I didn't know anything about it, but I did grow up near it.
UC would be a good school for you if you still have family here.
I applied to UC Berkeley and I applied to UC
right on.
Diego. I'm trying to go to a new place. I already lived in California. I already experienced that. On to the next.
Right on.
It's really frightening in Florida. I don't know what to do. Like, we're in this place where there's nothing we can do. They banned protesting at the Capitol and within 8 blocks of the Capitol. So we organized.
Wait, 8 blocks?
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. The free speech warrior Ron DeSantis, who bans protesting. I mean, it's
bans
unreal.
Protesting, bans books. No, it is unreal. How does this guy? It's shocking.
We organized a read-in that was originally going to be at the Capitol with a bunch of the authors of the banned books and a bunch of students at schools where books are banned. And we had to do it at a random bookstore, like out of downtown Tallahassee. It was crazy. And of course, and like, we did what we could, but it was at a random bookstore outside of Tallahassee, and that's where we're at. And then we can't do civil disobedience. We can't have unplanned protests, unpermitted protests, because in 2021, post Black Lives Matter, House Bill 1, I'm sure you saw this, made it so that if someone decided to plow us down in their car, they would not be liable.
They would not be liable, which is insane.
So now we need to have everything permitted, and there's proposed legislation that would make permits go through the legislature rather than cities.
They're trying to squash political dissent. They're stepping all over the First Amendment. They're stepping all over, this is the party that's supposed to be about small government and civil liberty, and they're not, clearly. They're doing the opposite. But, in a way, I'm kind of seeing these guys actually make the case now that they don't like democracy, right? Democracy isn't good. It's bad because they can't get, the actual bills passed, the legislation that they want passed in the country via democracy, right? That's why they're kind of veering towards more fascism and oligarchy, because they know that is how they bring about these changes. As loud as these folks are, they're not the majority of Americans. But again, you don't need a majority to have something really bad happen. It doesn't take anywhere near a majority. Small groups of people can affect bad change if they're able to, loud enough, have bought Congress folks, whatnot, which is what we're seeing in many states.
What do you think DeSantis's White House chances are?
Yeah.
Oh.
How does that make you feel?
When Donald Trump was running for president, I joked that I would leave the country if he won. But if DeSantis wins, I am leaving the country and I'm not coming back, because that would be the end of what we know to be the United States of America.
I agree.
I agree.
I hate to give DeSantis any credit, but he went to Harvard and Yale, so he knows what he's doing.
He's very effective, obviously.
No, I think that Ron DeSantis, and I despise Trump with every fiber of my being, but I think Ron DeSantis is actually what people were saying Trump was. Like that Trump, like Trump is this. Trump's an egotistical jerk. But Ron DeSantis is the competent fascist.
Right.
He's evil. He's evil. Like I can't put it into more words. Joe Biden is really old and sucks a lot of the time. And I was starting to like him, and then he approved the Willow Project, and now I hate him again. And Ron DeSantis said on Tuesday that he believes he would beat Joe Biden in a presidential race.
Possible.
I think he would. Yeah.
I think he has a shot of it.
Possible. Last year, if you had asked me that, I would have said absolutely not. If you had asked me that a month ago, I would have said, "Oh no, there's no way." Like Ron DeSantis is an obvious fascist, but
we have a growth in fascism in this country. Like, I cover a lot of right-wing extremism, and I see these folks now, instead of saying we want democracy, they're not saying that anymore.
No,
and in fact, a lot of these fascists wildly are also becoming very anti-capitalist. And the reason for that, of course, is because they see the massive, a lot of the things that the left views as a problem, they do as well. Massive income inequality, corporate oligarchy, regulatory capture. What's going on in East Palestine is a prime example of that. So, but their answer to all of that is an increase in authoritarian state. It is bigotry. It is hatred towards the other. It is white nationalism. Let's stop with immigration. Let's deport the folks that are brown and black that are already here in the country, taking your jobs from you. They just have a different, outcome to that. And if the Democratic Party doesn't realize it now, I just don't. It's frustrating. I don't know how to make them see the answer here. Is that they need to run a candidate that offers a left-wing solution to these economic problems. If that doesn't happen, it's just an ever amount of increasing fascism, I think.
I absolutely agree. But this is the problem with the two-party system. What Republicans do is completely unrecognizable to the original views of the Republican Party, small government, et cetera. So the Democrats are just as split, and Florida is a great example of this. Our Democratic Party doesn't even exist. It doesn't exist. Like it technically exists, but it doesn't exist, and it's horrible. And that's because there's this idea in our country of both sides. I always hear people say, "Oh, well, you got to hear both sides." that's bullshit. We need to start saying all sides, and we need to start understanding
I
that
agree.
there are more than two perspectives to every issue.
Oh,
And
100%. And sometimes the truth just needs to be the truth, and that doesn't require having both sides either. Sometimes the truth is obvious, and there's no reason to give somebody that
The
is
truth
full of
does-
hate the same amount of time or the same platform. That's just my opinion on it.
Well, I have one more question for you.
I actually
As
have
a-
one too, but you go first.
that's-
So, as a trans youth, what do you think is the biggest common misconception? And I'm not talking like in circles like this, but amidst like the place at large and the corporate media and stuff like that. What do you think is the biggest misconception around gender affirming care? What do you commonly see people getting wrong about what it actually is and what it's about?
That it's being readily given out, that it's easily accessible. It's
Right.
not.
It's not.
I'll tell you a sort of personal story. Someone very close in my life in middle school thought that they were a boy, and they wanted to go on gender affirming care. But after meeting with a therapist and having those conversations, they realized that they were not, and that that was just an exploration, and it was misguided feelings, and that was just the first barrier, and there are so many before you can actually
Right.
access to those hormones. You can't just go in and get them unless
No,
you're
you can't. Yeah.
unless you're going to, like, I don't know, like some sort of fake black market doctor. You're not going to be able to just access it. There's so many barriers of entry, and that only less than 1% of trans people end up detransitioning. So it's not
small, yeah.
an issue, and the majority of people, young people included, who access gender affirming care end up so it saves their lives. Everyone I talk to says gender affirming care saved my life, and it's just not being readily given out, and they're acting like it is. They're acting like it's being forced on kids. It's not, because you have to have a diagnosis before you can have treatment, and doctors aren't stupid.
No, they're not. I mean, and it's legitimate healthcare for those that need it. I knew somebody in my 20s that was intersex. They had been born with various degrees of both sex organs. Just leave it at that. But for them, it was a necessary health thing, right? This individual was lucky enough to not have their parents make a decision for them at birth as to what they were to be later in life. So they were able to do that on their own. Which leads to a much happier individual and less issues. But a lot of these folks that are just throwing out this rhetoric, they don't understand it. They have absolutely no. And if you ask them about something as simple as this, they don't have a response for it because they don't even consider it. It never occurs to them that there are legitimate health reasons, right, that are not driven by their backwards notions of what it is to be male or female. That exist in the world. So speaking of it, I'm as the cisgender woman in the room, I'm going to bring this up because I'm kind of fed up with TERFs right now in a big way. I feel like this whole TERF thing is really motivating a lot of the hatred. A lot of the TERFs see themselves as being liberals or on the left. They fail to understand a lot of the intricacies of what it means to be trans. They have this kind of mistaken belief, I think, that if they allow the space and to be inclusive, that they're somehow losing out on women's rights, which I personally think is ridiculous. I think is absolutely ridiculous. But also they have, they end up having these really untenable positions, right? So because this has been on Twitter the last few days, I've had TERFs, one of them said to me, well, men can't give birth. And I was like, yeah, a lot of women can't give birth either. Does that mean they're not women? Or, women have periods. And I'm like, do they though? I mean, so like a woman that's gone through menopause, now all of a sudden she's no longer a woman. I mean, point being, it is just not that simple. It's not that black and white. What is your feelings towards TERFs? Do you find this to be super problematic? Do you think it's inflaming the arguments that are coming from right-wing extremists even more?
I think, I mean, as with any other hatred, it's definitely a problem. It's obviously misguided anger. The people who are taking away women's rights are not trans women. It's
no, exactly.
Men in power. Oh, whoops. So
but you're right. You're absolutely right.
the other thing is, there's this really interesting thing when a certain group is being attacked so brutally, trans people, people in proximity but without complete privilege try to approximate themselves closer to the cis white male rather than the oppressed group, and they try to separate themselves thinking that they will be taken in by the people in power, thinking that will save them. At a lot of the committee hearings, there were like 2 or 3 maybe gays against groomers, cis white men coming to speak out against the transgender agenda, and I wanna smack them and say, they're gonna come after you next.
You next, exactly. How do you not see it?
Safe. Yeah. There's a famous quote that's like, first they came for the Jews, but I didn't fight back because I wasn't a Jew, and then they came for the trade unionists, and then they came for the gays, and then they came for me, and there's no one left to defend. And that's exactly what's happening. And unfortunately, TERFs and gays against groomers and everyone trying to separate themselves from their own oppressed identities are going to be on the wrong side of history, and soon there's going to be no one left to save you. Yeah.
I agree. I agree with that. Will, do you have a Twitter, or do you have some place that people can keep up with your activism?
Absolutely. So all my socials are at Proud Twinkie, or you can look up Will Larkin. Proud Twinkie.
I'm going to go follow you after this. Proud
Please
Twinkie.
do. So I mainly use, I post updates from the ground of what's going on with students, what's going on in schools. Twitter and Instagram, you get the fastest content for sure. But I also use TikTok sometimes and explain bills, explain legislation, post videos of myself and others testifying. So yeah, Proud Twinkie on everything. I give updates.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for everything you do, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for spreading the word. Hope y'all have a wonderful day wherever where are you guys?
We're in California.
I'm in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Yeah, Los Angeles.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And Jordan's obviously on the East Coast. We're spread out across the country at Status Coup.
Okay, yeah. Well, when Jordan interviewed us last time, and I said in the interview, this legislation is going to lead to suicides. It's going to lead to people killing themselves. And the next day in school, I got pulled out of class by the administration, and they're like, "Can you give us a list of names of people who are going to kill themselves?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And it was because of that video, because it was on campus, that they had to say something. Wow. And I was like, I don't know. Like, first of all, no, I'm not giving you a list of names of people I think will kill themselves. Second of all, this is not how you're gonna stop it. It's gonna be fighting against this legislation, and yeah. Anyways.
I agree.
All right.
Stay strong, Will. Stay strong.